When it comes to the ancient world, you can't always trust what you're seeing. Something that looks a few hundred years old might go back millions of years. Or a structure might seem far too advanced for the time it was built. And yet, they were the ones who created it. In this video, you are going to see plenty of incredible ancient finds that still leave experts searching for answers. Number 15. Lion Gate of Hatusa. The entrance to the legendary ancient city of Hatusa wasn't designed to look normal. Anyone walking toward it would have been met by two massive stone lions staring straight ahead like they were guarding something important. But don't know what. This gate goes back to around the 14th century BCE, built by the Hittites when the city was at its peak. It clearly had a defensive role, controlling who came in and out, but it also feels symbolic. Those lions weren't just decoration. They were likely meant to send a message, something about power, protection, and maybe even fear. The stonework itself is impressive, especially considering how old it is. The blocks fit together tightly, with no obvious gaps, which isn't easy even today. Parts of the structure have worn down over time, but enough remains to show the level of planning that went into it. What still raises questions is how they managed to build something this precise so early on. Number 14. Ring of Brodgar. In the Orkney Islands, there's a circle of standing stones that doesn't explain itself. It just sits there, surrounded by open land and water, like it's been there longer than anything around it. The Ring of Brodgar is believed to be around 4,000 to 4,500 years old, though no one can say that for certain. At one time, there were about 60 stones forming the circle. Now, fewer than half of them are still standing. People have tried to figure out what it was used for, but nothing fits perfectly. Rituals get mentioned a lot, but that's usually the go-to when there's no clear answer. What makes it stranger is how little digging has actually been done there. Most of what's said about it comes from comparison, not direct evidence. There are markings on some stones, but those were added much later. The original purpose behind the circle is still completely unclear. Number 13. Dendera Zodiac. Some ancient carvings are easy to understand, but this one isn't. The Dendera Zodiac has been studied for years, and even now people don't fully agree on what they're looking at. It originally sat inside a temple in Egypt, carved into the ceiling of a small chapel. The images feel familiar. There's a bull that likely connects to Taurus and scales that resemble Libra. That part isn't too controversial. The problem is figuring out when it was made. Some experts place it around 2,300 years ago. Others push it back further, closer to 3,400 years. That gap might not sound huge, but it changes everything. If it's older, then it could be one of the earliest attempts to map the sky in Egyptian history. Right now, the original piece isn't even in Egypt anymore. It's in the Louvre, and even there, surrounded by experts, it still doesn't give up all its answers. Number 12. The Golden Hats of the Bronze Age. Well, first of all, these objects don't fit neatly into any category. They are tall, thin, and covered in repeating patterns. In simple words, the golden hats of the Bronze Age look almost unreal. We have only found 4 so far, and these hats date back between 3,400 and 2,800 years. 3 were discovered in Germany and 1 in France. And surprisingly, their real purpose is still debated. Some early guesses linked them to ceremonial clothing, while others leaned toward symbolic or even ritual use. The patterns carved into the surface aren't random. Many believe they connect to astronomical cycles or agricultural timing, suggesting the people who wore them may have been seen as holders of knowledge. Not leaders in the traditional sense, but individuals trusted to interpret signs. The craftsmanship is precise, especially considering how thin the gold is. That alone raises questions about the techniques used. And no clear answer explains exactly what they were for. But whatever their role, they carried meaning far beyond decoration and fashion. Number 11. Cerne Abbas Giant. There's a large figure carved into a hillside in Dorset, England, and it's hard to miss once you know it's there. The outline shows a human shape, and it's been part of the landscape for as long as anyone can remember. For a long time, people knew it was old, but no one could say exactly how old. More recent testing on the soil has pushed its origin back to around 3,000 years ago. That's much earlier than expected, especially considering there's no written mention of it until the late 1600s. Back then, it might not have been as visible as it is today. The figure is maintained regularly with chalk, which keeps it sharp against the hillside. Without that upkeep, and it would likely fade away. As for what it represents, that part isn't settled. Some link it to ancient gods, others think it might represent Hercules. In reality, its original meaning is still uncertain. Number 10. Lepenski Vir sculptures. Back in 2019, archaeologists working along the Danube River in Serbia ran into something they couldn't really explain. They started uncovering small stone figures, and right away, something about them felt off. The faces don't look human. They've got this fish-like shape, with wide traits and these downward mouths that give them a strange, almost sad expression. They weren't rough carvings either. Whoever made them knew exactly what they were doing. These figures are believed to be around 8,000 years old and are tied to a place called Lepenski Vir. Some researchers think it might have been one of the earliest organized settlements in Europe. But even with that, the figures don't match anything else from that time. No one knows what they represent. Some say river spirits, and others think they could be connected to loss or memory. Whatever the case, they don't feel random. They feel like they meant something important. Number 9. Saudi Arabian mustatils. In Saudi Arabia, there are hundreds of ancient stone structures spread across the landscape, and they don't get talked about nearly as much as they should. They're called mustatils, and they're much older than most people expect. Some of them go back around 7,300 years, which places them well before monuments like legendary Stonehenge. Their shape is simple, long rectangular walls with platforms at either end. But the purpose behind them isn't obvious. When archaeologists started examining them more closely, they found animal remains inside, especially cattle horns and skulls. That suggests some kind of ritual activity, possibly involving offerings or sacrifices. But beyond that, there's no clear explanation. These structures weren't studied properly until fairly recently, even though they were noticed decades ago. That means a lot of the answers are still missing. Some believe they were tied to early beliefs about nature or weather, but for now, that's still just a guess. So, do you have any idea what they actually are? Number 8. Tassili N'Ajjer cave paintings. There's a place in Algeria where ancient paintings cover the rock walls, and most of what's there feels familiar. You see animals, people, and scenes that look like everyday life. And then you notice the figures that don't fit. Some of them look like they're wearing full suits, with rounded heads that almost resemble helmets. It's the kind of detail that makes you stop and look again. These paintings go back at least 10,000 years, maybe even further. That's what makes it harder to brush off. The same people who painted animals that they clearly recognized also created these weird figures. So where did that idea come from? Some people connect it to ancient astronaut theories, while others think it's symbolic or tied to rituals we don't understand anymore. There's no clear answer either way. But once you see those figures, it's hard to ignore how different they feel from everything else around them, and there is also one painting that is very, very special. But number 7, newspaper rock. This rock in Utah holds thousands of markings, layered over each other like pages in a book no one can fully read anymore. People call it newspaper rock, and the name fits in a strange way. Across its surface, more than 650 carvings have been etched over the span of about 2,000 years. Different cultures came through: archaic groups, Fremont people, Pueblo communities, later Navajo, and Anglo settlers. Each one added something. leaving behind symbols, figures, and shapes that meant something at the time. Some of the carvings are easy enough to recognize: animals, people, and hunting scenes. Others feel more abstract, almost human but slightly off, with details like horns or unusual proportions. In Navajo, it's called the rock that tells a story, which sounds simple until you realize we don't actually know most of those stories anymore. The surface is still there, but the meaning behind it has faded with the people who made it. Number 6. Kaaba-ye Zartosht. There's a stone cube standing near Naqshi Rustam in Iran that no one seems fully confident explaining. It's called Kaaba-ye Zartosht, and while its shape is simple, its purpose is anything but clear. The structure has been studied for years, yet every explanation feels incomplete. Some believe it holds sacred texts. Others think it may have stored important relics. There's even an old idea that a fire once burned inside it continuously, tied to Zoroastrian traditions. But the interior doesn't really support that. There's barely any ventilation. What adds to the mystery is where it stands. It faces the tomb of Darius the Great, one of the most powerful rulers of the Achaemenid Empire. That placement doesn't feel accidental. Almost everyone agrees it served some kind of religious role. Beyond that, things get vague. It's one of those structures where the questions have outlasted the answers, and maybe that's part of why it still draws attention. Number 5. Royal Tombs of Sipan. This discovery could have been lost completely if things had gone a little differently. In 1987, a group of looters found the tomb in Peru and were already trying to break into it. Before they got the chance, they turned on each other, and that's what brought the authorities in. Once archaeologists stepped in, they realized how much had been preserved. Inside was the burial of a powerful figure, now known as the Lord of Sipan, surrounded by gold, jewelry, and carefully placed objects. Nothing had been disturbed. That alone is rare. What stands out even more is what was placed around him. There were other bodies, including what appears to be a guard sitting near the entrance. His feet had been removed, likely to keep him from leaving his position, even after death. It says a lot about how seriously they took the idea of the afterlife. The tomb gives answers, but it also leaves some behind. All right, guys, now let's head over to number 4, Green Sarcophagus. When this ancient Egyptian coffin made headlines, it wasn't because of its size or age. It was the face painted on it. The figure was green, which immediately set it apart and gave rise to the simple name it's now known by, the Green Sarcophagus. The coffin belonged to a priest named Ankenmat and dates back over 2,300 years. That part is clear. What complicated things were its journey? At some point, it was taken illegally from a burial site and ended up passing through private hands before being sold to a museum in the United States. There's no indication the buyers knew its origins, but once the truth surfaced, efforts were made to return it. Eventually, it was sent back to Egypt, where it belongs. Beyond the legal story, the artifact itself holds value that's hard to measure. Not just financially, though estimates run extremely high, but historically. It represents a life, a belief system, and a culture that continues to surface piece by piece. Number 3. Baalbek megaliths. In Lebanon, there's a quarry that contains one of the largest carved stones ever discovered. It's massive, far beyond what you'd expect to see left unfinished. The block measures over 60 feet in length and weighs more than 1,600 tons. It was cut during the time when the Romans controlled the area, likely intended for use in a nearby temple. What's difficult to understand is not just how it was carved, but how they planned to move it. Even with modern equipment, handling something of that size wouldn't be simple. Yet the Romans managed to transport and position other large stones in the same region. The precision of the cut is also worth noting. The surfaces are clean and controlled, not rough or uneven. It shows a level of planning that still raises questions. The stone was never used, which leaves us guessing about what might have gone wrong. Number 2. Pavlopetri stories about lost cities usually drift toward Atlantis. Something people have been searching for without ever finding proof. But what often gets overlooked is that real cities have already been found underwater. Pavlopetri is one of the clearest examples. It doesn't rely on myth or weird speculation. The remains are there, mapped out beneath the surface. You can trace the streets, see how buildings were arranged, and understand how people once lived there. It existed for centuries before it disappeared, most likely due to natural forces rather than legend. The idea that an entire community could vanish like that isn't hard to accept when you see the evidence. What makes it interesting is not just the destruction, but what was lost with it. A way of life, a system, possibly even ideas that never made it beyond that place. It shifts the focus away from fantasy and back toward what actually happened. All right, guys, now let's end this journey with Number 1. Olmec glyphs and the Cascajal Block. There's an ongoing debate about where writing in the Americas really began, and this discovery sits right in the middle of it. The Cascajal Block was found in Mexico and is covered with a series of carved symbols that don't clearly match anything else. It's believed to date back to around 900 BCE, which would make it one of the earliest known examples of writing in the region. The problem is, no one can agree on what it actually represents. Some researchers believe it's a true writing system, while others think it might be something closer to symbolic markings without a fixed language behind it. The shapes don't connect neatly to later scripts like the Mayan system, and which makes it harder to trace. There have been other similar finds, but none that explain it. So the question remains, was this an early form of writing or something entirely different? Well, drop your theory below, and hope you've enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and be sure to like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you very soon in the next one.